What did I just watch? Folks, lovelies, I have thoughts. But first, roll the intro. So, hello, my lovelies. This is Nini, and you're watching my channel. Today, we're going to talk about a movie reaction. This will be the first on my channel. It's not going to be the prettiest. Sorry, I'm still a YouTube newbie, but I just have to get some of my thoughts out of my brain and some things off my chest. I'm going to be talking about the 2024 version of The Crow, the remake of one of my most beloved movies of all times. Now, to preface all this, I'll give you a little bit of Nini history. The original Crow with Brandon Lee came out when I was in high school. It literally was the cornerstone of my personality for like 5 years. I went from girl who wanted to be one of the preppies to being a goth girl at the turn of a dime. And I'm talking old school 90s goth, not emo, goth. And I lived and breathed that culture, like I said, for 5 years. The OST for the original 94 version was quite literally the soundtrack to my life. So when I say that I tried my absolute best to walk into this movie giving it the benefit of the doubt, I want you to understand that I really, really tried. And unfortunately, yeah, I failed that test. Because this movie, y'all, is god awful. Like, objectively, it's awful. I wasn't expecting it to follow beat for beat the original 94 or the comics for that matter, because artistic representation and, tweak it here, tweak it there, make it your own, I get that. But when you deviate from the original story so much with all these tiny little details that add up to a clusterfuck of a disaster, you can't help but go, why did I waste my time and why did I waste my money? And more importantly, why in the world did Lionsgate think this was a good movie to put out this year? Or ever, for that matter. But here, I'm going to go into some little spoiler territories. Sorry, folks. This is a I'm ranting, this movie sucks kind of video. So I'm not going to pick up on everything. I'm not going to show everything that bothered me. But I'm going to give you a general feel of the things that really, really just irked me so bad that I wanted to just walk away. But the completionist in me had to see it through to the end. Okay, so first and foremost, and I hate having to compare it to the original 94 version, however, the romance part of this movie is not only ungodly long, but absolutely pointless and slower than molasses in January kind of boring. Okay? Look, I'm a huge fan of romances. Romances are my thing. I play games for romance. I watch television shows for romance. The only thing I don't do is watch reality shows because that's boring. So when I say that romance is a big deal to me and this fell super damn flat, I am not joking. Now, pieces of this romance are kind of okay, but my biggest complaint about the Eric and Shelley in this version is, and no offense to people who have these kind of issues, but they turned the innocent Shelley into a drug addicted criminal, and Eric the same way. They literally took innocent, loving couple who dies tragically and completely erased the innocent part. The whole point of why we were so drawn to this couple to begin with was because they were innocent, good people, seemingly good people, who were just caught up in stuff that had nothing to do with them, and they died. And then you get the story of Eric coming back a year later with the powers of the crow to right all the wrongs and be a mix of vengeance and justice for his and Shelley's death. Okay? That absolutely just tears up what you're supposed to feel, the connection you're supposed to feel with Eric and Shelley when it comes to their death. If you don't like the characters before they died, you have no vested interest in what happens to them after it. And that's just, oh my God. I was so furious about this movie in general that I ranted for 2 hours after this, just trying to get all my thoughts out. Now, back to the romance. The fact that establishing them as a couple takes 40 minutes to an hour of the runtime is so superfluous that it's just dumb. You can establish a romance and prove that they're all lovey-dovey and everything, but what we see is basically a 2-week drug-filled trip of them falling in love because they're constantly getting drunk, constantly getting high, and going to raves and stuff. Like, I don't need to see all that. Make the romance compelling. That's what was so cool about the 94 version, is that what little we got about them, it was compelling and it made you want to root for Eric when he came back from the dead and started righting all the wrongs. But there's no connection there. None whatsoever. It's like, okay, and then when you get into the whole resurrection stuff, there's just a whole scene, bunches of scenes that happens in this kind of limbo place, okay? Where he figures out he's dead and that he's got the ability to go back. The design of the area is pretty cool. It's this multi-layered, inception-y kind of space that's based on like a railway station. So there's tracks everywhere and it pans up and you see more and more tracks crisscrossing up into the sky. The vibe is cool. There's water lilies and stuff floating in water around the tracks and everything. It looks aesthetically good. But then there's this sage-like secondary character who explains to Eric, why he's there. And the show don't tell stuff in this is practically non-existent. You get exposition, and it would have been fine if they had, I don't know, done a scene where Eric was flipping through a book about mysticism or whatever and read something about the crow and read it out loud to Shelley in the hour plus build up for their romance. And you wouldn't need this sage-like character to explain everything to him. Anyway, the whole time that Eric goes back and tries to right the wrongs, he steps back into the material plane, the real world, with absolutely no idea where to start. None. Zip, zero, zilch. Because he didn't press Shelley about her past. He didn't want to know. So it is this Sherlock Holmes-esque step-by-step investigation between one guy's cell phone and another guy's cell phone, and him dying and getting slung back into limbo every once in a while. And it's just, it's garbage. It's absolute garbage. I can't stand it. And here's a pet peeve of this movie that just irked me so bad. Okay, look. The name of the movie is The Crow. So crows, the animal, should feature prevalently in this story. And they do, but They do absolutely nothing. Like, there's no practical. It's all CGI. There's no real crow in this movie. If they would have had the crow land on Eric's shoulder once, or implemented the ability that the crow had in the 94 version where he could see through the crow's eyes, it made the crow, the animal, relevant to the story. Practically. Like it was its guide and its helper, and it would do whatever it needs to do to help him do what he needs to do, right? Which is what the crow in the 94 version did. But no, it's just background noise. And there's this one scene where Eric is walking down the sidewalk and the wall is lit up by wall lights. And as he's walking, the crow flies over his shoulder and then disappears into the darkness. But it doesn't disappear because the CG's so bad that there's light refraction on it and you can actually see it in pitch dark. Okay, look, I know that's nitpicky, but you shouldn't be able to see it once it disappears in pitch dark. So yeah, no. Okay. The ending of this movie literally just ruins the entire movie in one shot. So he tells the guy, the sage-like guide that's in limbo, that for some reasons he's in trouble and that he can't, that they're not going to let him go back to the real world and finish his mission. And he decides that, Eric decides that he's going to turn around and say, well, I'll trade my life for Shelley's. I'll go do this, kill all the bad guys, and if I get it done, you set her free from the underworld and let her live again. And that's the deal. Okay? He makes this deal. He goes back to the really real world and turns into like the actual crow, like the crow you would expect in this movie. And it's like the last half hour is when we get actual Eric Draven the Crow, action-packed martial artist, killing bad guys and going after the big bad. Okay. And we'll get to the final, like the opera scene. Okay, let me just say this. The big fight, the crescendo of the story, is Eric going through the opera house, killing dozens and dozens and dozens of henchmen, trying to get to basically the second in command of the big bad guy, right? Aesthetically, combat-wise, it looked okay. And it was juxtaposed to this opera that is playing on stage, and all this is happening, all the gore and everything is happening on the stairwells heading up to the mezzanine. So great. And it's super, super gory. I liked it, but seriously, it was the only part of the movie that I was actually like smiling and interested in. I'm like, now this is cool, because I like gore, to a certain degree, of course. And I like action. So it was like, cool, yay, we get him being all kinds of Billy Badass. And then the ending, I won't tell you what happens with the boss, with the big guy. Okay, the number one. We're not gonna spoil that much. But at the very ending, when the bad guy is defeated, Shelley and Eric are suddenly in limbo again. She is freed from hell, and she comes up out of the water, and they have a nice little cute conversation. He tells her that he can't go with her, that she's going to live, and everything's happy, happy, joy, joy. It's a happy ending, supposedly, right? And she disappears, and the scene switches to the really real world, where she's being revived by EMTs on the floor of the apartment where she was suffocated at when they were originally killed. So, wait a minute, hold up. If she gets her life back, that means that they completely undid everything after her death. So all the revenge plot stuff didn't happen. Because Eric's corpse is sitting beside her, dead as a doornail, and she gets revived. at the same moment where the two of them sloughed off their mortal coils earlier in the movie. And I'm like, why did you just ruin what you were trying to build? It's so terrible, guys. Now, here is my number one biggest problem, and I mentioned it earlier. The music in this movie sucks so hard. Like, it's just terrible, terrible, terrible. Like, in the 94 version, the music was all thematic. It fit the graphics, the theme, the overall aesthetic of the world, the dirty, grimy world. It made sense. This movie, its music drops and switches through different genres that make absolutely no sense. Like, none. And visually, this movie is gray and boring. Like, there's no gothic aesthetic whatsoever. It's just boring. So yeah, that's my little rant, I guess. Honest to God, look, I'm as a Crow fan and someone who lived and breathed 90s goth back in the day, I am telling you, please do not waste your money. Do not waste your time. This movie is terrible. And as someone who's trying to be objective about it, the movie is still bad. Like, if I take my bias completely out and look at it just how the movie's made and how it's acted, 3 out of 10 at best. And definitely one of the worst movies of the year. But again, that's all my opinion, and I'm kind of just, this is how I feel. I wanted to rant. I apologize if I stuttered or anything in this video. This is all first take, just getting it out there. If you like what I do and want to come hang out with me or watch more of my videos, you can subscribe and hit the like button, maybe comment or give me your opinions on how you felt. And honestly, I'm going to sign this one off with a thought that crossed my mind when I got done watching this movie. In the original 1994 movie, there is a line that has always stuck with me, and it absolutely describes how I felt after watching this movie. To quote Brandon Lee and Eric Draven, the real Eric Draven, here's the man himself.
Victim.